It's 10:30 and we're ready to get started to our first Highway 36A online town hall meeting with CEO Phyllis Saathoff with Port Freeport. We are continuing to have people join us. Debbie Thelen with 36A is admitting people as they come in. A few rules we want to go over is that if you would please be very cognizant of any noise in your background, and please, it would be best to stay muted during the presentation. So that would be a best practice we would ask all the participants to do, to go ahead and mute yourself. The format that we'll get into here in just a moment after we have Commissioner Pirtle join us, is that we'll go through, do some brief introductions, and then dive pretty quickly into the presentation by Ms. Saathoff, which we look forward to very much. There are a lot of great things happening with Port Freeport. Is an integral part and plays an integral role in what in 36A's mission and how we envision a trade and transportation corridor. So we look very much toward that presentation. Debbie, as Commissioner Pirtle.
He's on, but he's muted right now.
I am here, Jim. Yes, sir.
There you go. Well, we'll go ahead and throw it to you, Commissioner, just for a few brief comments, and then we'll get into the introductions for the presentation.
Very good. Well, I would like to welcome everyone that's here joining us today. As you can, we'll find out in a little bit, Port Freeport is growing rapidly. We continue to bring new business into the area. I'm talking to you, by the way, from sunny South Dakota right now. It was 57 degrees this morning, and it is currently 70 degrees now. So beautiful day up here. We're on vacation, but enjoying life a little bit. So anyway, without anything further, I would recommend that those who have not gone to the 36A Coalition webpage, please go there and keep track of what's going on. There have been numerous, about 4 contracts, I guess, led on Highway 36 right now. If you haven't been up and down Highway 36 and seen the growth that's going on there, the widening of that highway, I would encourage you to do that. That makes this Highway 36A Coalition and the extension of Highway 36 even more critical because that corridor is growing rapidly. So very good. Jim, with that, I'll turn it back over to you and let you introduce Ms. Saathoff, please, sir.
All right. Well, just, of course, everyone knows Phyllis, but we'll just go over some of the career highlights because we're, again, it's just an exceptional opportunity to have someone with her talents and knowledge be able to speak with our group. So Phyllis began her maritime career at Port Freeport in 1992, serving as managing director and interim executive port director and CEO before she joined the Port of Houston Authority in October 2012. She served in various capacities during her tenure at the Port of Houston Authority, including Chief People Officer, Deputy Executive Director of Corporate Affairs. She returned to Port Freeport in April 2016 as its CEO. Under her leadership, Port Freeport has been successful in obtaining U.S. Army Corps of Engineer Chief's report to Congress to deepen the Freeport Harbor Channel to 56 feet, initiating the development and financing of the port's first container terminal, and bringing new business and investment to the port. She has been recognized as one of the top 10 women in Gulf transportation by Gulf Shipper magazine, and is past president of the National Association of Foreign Trade Zones and former treasurer of the Texas Gulf Ports Association. She currently serves as chairwoman on the Port Authority Advisory Committee to the Texas Department of Transportation, HJC Transportation Policy Council member, vice president of Texas Ports Association, and serves on the board of directors for the National Waterways Conference. So we really appreciate her time and look forward to her presentation. Thank you, Ms. Saathoff, for joining us, and please go ahead.
All right, well, thank you. Appreciate that introduction, and it's good to be back with everyone, even though it is in a virtual environment. It's good to be connected again, and look forward to just sharing some of the things that we're doing at Port Freeport, the advances that we've made. It's even though it's 2020 has played out a little differently than any of us would have expected, and been presented with some economic challenges and other challenges. We're continuing to advance the infrastructure development at the port despite all of that, and I think you'll be excited to hear where we're at and what's coming in the next few months. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see the slide presentation. And of course, I don't know who all is on here attending today, but you'll see a few introductory slides just to give you a brief overview of Port Freeport itself, but I'll quickly get into what's happening at the port. So I'm going to share my screen now. Hey, can everyone see that? Okay, good. Well, we've been telling you for several years that the port is growing. We're going bigger, deeper, wider, and we are definitely doing that, staying focused on our key strategic initiatives, allowing us to do that and to grow the activity in the port, which is exactly what the voters of Brazoria County planned when they created Port Freeport back in 1925. And that's the point at which they wanted to divert the Brazos River so that there was a reliable port of entry into this region, and created Port Freeport to enter into the first federal project that diverted the Brazos River. It's also given the responsibilities to create infrastructure that would expand cargo handling opportunities and create economic development for this region. The Port District or Navigation District covers most of Brazoria County. There are 4 distinct precincts in the area, and that is a residency requirement for running for Port Commission. The area Precinct 1, down where the port is located there in green, that is the precinct that has 2 positions. Precincts 2, 3, and 4 each are represented by 1 Port Commission position, and then there's an at-large position. The commissioners serve 6-year terms, and those terms are staggered with 2 positions up for election in odd years. So next May, there will be 2 positions up for election. The boundaries of the Navigation District, in case you're not clear, it's the Fort Bend County line to the west. And then if you're coming up 288, this boundary is right about just before Highway 6, and then it follows Chocolate Bayou on the east. And of course, at the west, it's the Matagorda County line as well. These are the fine gentlemen that have committed significant time to serving on the Port Commission and representing the Navigation District and help to advance our strategic initiatives. Your current chairman of 36A Coalition is also the chairman of the Port Commission and is doing a great job. Paul Cresta is our vice chairman, Rudy Santos is secretary, and John Haas is assistant secretary. Commissioner Singhania and Commissioner Croft are also serving on the Port Commission. With Commissioner Croft being the newest member, he was elected last year, so he just served just over a year on the Port Commission. We're really glad to have him and his financial background on the board. Rudy is nearing the end of his first term, and then Commissioner Singhania and Haas, I believe, are in their 3rd terms. The other gentlemen are in their 2nd terms. So these folks have been very committed to, again, seeing the success of the port and the continued development of the port for economic growth in this region. And that growth is evidenced by the numbers. We've had economic impact studies done by Texas A&M Transportation Institute. Go Aggies, right? In 2012, the port was impacting just over 67,000 or about 67,000 jobs and generating 18 billion annually in economic throughput or economic impact. In 2019, that has grown to be more than 150,000 jobs and almost 100 billion annually in economic output, which is significant. That's on, basically 5 times what it was just just 7 years ago. And this isn't current. You know, we have to use the most recent completed data available to us to do, published data to do these studies. And so this definitely are lagging numbers. I fully expect when we do another update that you will see a continued trend of growth and greater economic impact. In this last study, we also looked at it on a nationwide basis. What I showed you on the previous slide was state and regional impacts. This is on nationwide basis. Port Freeport and the users of this channel are impacting close to 280,000 jobs, generating total tax revenues of over $5 billion and total economic impact on an annual basis of just under $149 billion. And that's an important, these are important numbers to remember when we talk about our federal channel project. Annually putting $5.4 billion into federal tax revenues into the system, and what we're asking for the federal government to fund on our channel project is just a small fraction of that. So where's the port ranking? Currently, you know, we have been cited as one of the top 10 fastest growing U.S. ports in terms of exports by Forbes magazine. But we're currently 10th in the nation in chemicals, 19th in total tonnage, and 26th in containerized cargo movements. And that is supported by our current 46-foot channel. Again, the foresight of the visionaries back in 1925 to create a reliable port of entry, and one that this community and this region has supported the continued expansion and deepening, has been really important. And that's delivered to this point, the 46-foot channel at 7.5 miles long, which is quite an advantage because we don't have long transit times in order to get the vessels into the harbor. Also, we have lower costs to maintain those depths on an annual basis, which when looking at funding for the Corps, their dollars are, you know, stretched thin, and ours being low cost to maintain is always an advantage for us in keeping our full authorized depth in service. Our tonnage activity, in 2019, we handled over 1,030 vessel calls into the harbor. That means the vessel arrivals, that, you know, double that if you think about the transits. And then also sometimes there are movements within the channel to different berths. So, but more than 1,030 arrivals carrying approximately 21 million tons of cargo. And that vessel activity is forecasted to increase over the next several years by as much as 35% or more. We are anticipating our volumes, vessel calls, to be about 1,100 this year, and will increase beyond that in 2021. So I'm going to talk now a bit about what's happening in the inner harbor and who we're supporting at their public docks that are owned and have been built by Port Freeport, and then we'll talk a bit about the private terminal facilities that are in the port as well. So at our public dock facilities, currently we are a landlord port, so we lease out our land, our facilities for others to operate. And currently, those that you see on the screen are who are our tenants and users of the port. Newest members to that is CMA CGM, obviously is a global container carrier. They've now been with us for a couple of years, and their business is growing here at the port. And they're expanding their connections, opening up new opportunities for us in new markets, giving us that global competitiveness that we need out of the port, and will allow us to continue to grow other import and export business. Obviously, we handle this steel that supplies the Tenaris facility in Matagorda County, and Vulcan Materials has been a long-term tenant with handling aggregate from the Yucatan Peninsula. And then Dole and Chiquita have been our longtime partners in handling green fruit for this region and beyond, the middle part of the United States. We have Riviana on site, parboiling rice and packaging for domestic distribution, and also exporting rice to foreign markets. Ports America, Horizon Auto Logistics, Gulfstream, they all provide the stevedoring services in the port that hire the labor, who work the vessels and manage the containers and other activity in the port. And obviously, I also don't want to forget the Brazos pilots and just remind you what an important role they play in the port in safely managing the vessel calls to the berths and sailing them. They do a great job and are very important to the operations of the port. But these customers are bringing international shipping lines to the port. And I wanted to put these on a separate slide because Horizon Auto Logistics, the stevedore for the ro-ro operations, they started with Hogue Autoliners. They were really our first tenant in 2014 and had their sister company, the Auto Logistics arm of it, and they've expanded their services to other lines and other brands and opportunities. So we have, since 2014, we now have 5 different ro-ro carriers calling Port Freeport. And for those that may not know, that's roll-on, roll-off vessels. They're the ones that look like the big boxes. That's basically a floating parking garage with adjustable levels inside. Globus joined, and they're handling right now. They are handling the GM products that are built in Arlington, manufactured in Arlington, and moving to the Middle East. They're handling that business. Saloon Lines and Grimaldi both handle a lot of the used automobiles and other, high and heavy type equipment. They've been great additions to Port Freeport. Grimaldi is in its first year here at the port, and their volume of business is such that when they're here at the port, they're generally in port for 2.5 to 3 days, which is the equivalent of adding like 3 different services, because most of them are in and out of the port in a 24-hour period. And Wallenius Wilhelmsen, they are scheduled to make their second call to the port. So they're a very new addition to Port Freeport. But we have automobiles that are moving import and export. We're currently, as I mentioned, exporting the GM products to the Middle East market, but we have cars coming from Korea, from China, from Mexico. So we've got imports coming from several different regions, and then you take the high and heavy and look at where that's going. We are exporting high and heavy equipment for the mining industry in Australia, and then we're importing the Japanese products, Kobelco and Tadano cranes, into the U.S. market. So a lot of products going both directions. And if you come down to the port anytime in the near future, you will see on a particular day, you can see just about every space or footprint that we have available in the port that's supporting either used automobiles, some type of high and heavy equipment, or it may be a fire engine that's going somewhere else, an old ambulance, military equipment, of yacht. You never know what you're going to see in the port and where it may be moving in the world, but the activity has grown substantially since we started servicing ro-ro carriers in 2014. We also, as you know, have seen the growth in the region, industrial growth with more than $32 billion invested. We continue to handle high and heavy, or the heavy pieces, the components that go into these industrial facilities at the port. There's still some projects underway. So we'll be handling quite a bit through the end of this year and into 2021. Now, whether that keeps the same pace, that'll depend on the economic recovery and what capital decisions are made by industrial sector. But of the projects that have been completed, we've seen an uptick in vessel movements by Phillips 66 from their LPG, their liquid petroleum, liquid propane gas exports. That added about 220 vessel moves, called arrivals into the port on an annual basis. So that's been an area of significant growth for us. And they commenced those operations late in 2016. Freeport LNG is another project that's been very significant to this region, and they now have all 3 trains of liquefaction production capability in in operation, commercial operation, they brought the third train online early this year. And we saw a record level of 12 LNG vessels in 1 month before we experienced the COVID pandemic and the global economic shutdown, and then the dropping of the prices in the energy sector. So that fell off from there, but that's an indication of what's to come as everything recovers and they get back up to full operations. And they have the ability to produce 2.2 billion cubic feet of gas per day. And they have 2 berths in their facility, and they expect, at full operation, they'll handle about 6 vessels per month per train, or 18 vessels per month. That's and those are very large vessels. Each one is 1,000 foot or more in length, and you can just think about a football field and how big a vessel of that size is. So that's going to be great for our region, and again help to further drive up our vessel calls and our economic impacts, as well as our rankings on a national basis. Just the activity between Phillips 66 and Freeport LNG, and then you consider what the port has added in monthly ro-ro carrier calls, growing from 3 to 4 a month to now pretty consistently 11 or more per month. So we're growing in all sectors. So the future is looking good. Get back to our strategic initiatives, and I'm really excited to update you on the progress that we're making there. And with the type of growth that we're seeing, you can understand why we have to remain so focused on our decision making and how we advance the expansion of our facilities to keep pace with the growth that we're seeing, and continue to create those jobs and that economic impact. But as you've seen before, we've been very focused about the Freeport Harbor Channel deepening project and partial widening, building out our container handling facilities, developing our multimodal park that's rail served, and also supporting the efficient development of efficient transportation corridors from the port into other regions of Texas and into the heart of the United States. So starting with our discussion on our update on our Freeport Harbor Channel Improvement Project, that project is to take our channel down from its existing depth of 46 feet down to depths ranging from 51 to 56 feet. And to reorient you to this project, the 56 feet will come up. It is the area in purple that goes offshore and comes in just past the crude terminal that is operated by Seaway. And by the way, when things were really moving with the crude production coming out of the Permian Basin, this facility had shifted from being a primarily import facility to export facility, exporting crude. And we expect that to return once pricing in the oil and gas sector gets back to the $50 a barrel range, and the drilling is resumed in that region. But our purple section, again, will be at 56 feet and will extend an additional 2 miles offshore. That's the distance we have to go to get to the natural depth of the 56 feet. What you see in red and in green to this point will be at 51 feet, sufficient to handle anything that's coming through the expanded Panama Canal. And the area in blue here is designed for barge traffic. That was a deauthorized section of the channel. We're getting that reauthorized and deepened back to 26 feet. But when we complete this project, we will hold, at least for a while, the title of being the deepest port in Texas. Looking forward to that. And I can tell you with certainty now, our project will commence this year. That had been the goal. In February, we received our New Start designation. That's a really critical designation. Not only do you can't receive federal funding for construction until you get that designation. In 2020, they authorized 2 new starts for all of navigation projects in the United States, and Port Freeport and Port Everglades in Florida received those designations. So that was a really important milestone to achieve. And we also received $19 million in federal funding for the first increment of the federal project. And the first increment that will be done will be that green section that was in front of our container terminal. And when we get to talking about the container terminal expansion, I'll explain a little more why that was so important. So once you get your New Start designation, then you must enter into a project partnership agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. That took us a few months to get negotiated, but that was signed on June 25th of this year. So that allowed the Corps then to move forward with advertising that first increment or putting it out for bid. We had engineered and designed that increment. We had operated and done that under a work-in-kind or a memorandum of agreement so that we'd get work-in-kind credit once we did receive our New Start designation. So the project was ready to advertise, and they are soliciting the bids. They're scheduled to be opened August 10th, that's next Monday, which is exciting. And then the anticipation will be that they will award the contract in September, and then the contractor will be on site and begin dredging somewhere 45 to 60 days after that. So we will be able to say we commenced our dredging in 2020 on the project. This is a timeline I've presented before. Just from the time from 2012, we received the chief's report to getting our congressional authorization in 2014, doing a little bit of a reevaluation and getting that approved to 2020. That's, it's taken us a while to get to that point, and we've actually been working on it since 2003 when we initiated the feasibility study process. But we're here, we're constructing, and if the federal funding continues to be made available to us as we expect, this is a 5-year construction period. So we should complete in 2025, which to me would be a nice way to round out 100 years of Port Freeport being in existence. So that's what I'm telling them. I want done it. I'm going to try to make that point every time I get the opportunity, because we should be able to complete it in 5 years, and I think we can do it. So this has been a great year, despite all the challenges and the things that have faced our communities and our economy of recent. We do have things to celebrate, and things that will be really important for the future of Port Freeport and this region to continue supporting economic activity and economic growth and investment. One second, there we go. This was, in total, is a $295 million project, of which $130 million is Port Freeport's responsibility. If you recall, in 2018, we passed the bond election, voters giving us the authorization to issue $130 million in bonds to fulfill our local sponsor obligation. We issued the first increment in June of 2019. We issued $35 million of the $130, and that will be used to meet our portion of the obligation associated with this first reach. And then also will partially offset what we need to do in the second reach, which will be the area around that bends around the Dow property. We anticipate making our second issuance in the second quarter of 2021, and probably being in the same general amount of money. And before I move on to this, I'd also like to point out today that the House passed their version of the Energy and Water Appropriations Bill. And that's really important, because that is the funding that provides the funding to the Corps for construction and operations and maintenance. And depending on the level of funding that's provided for construction, it affects how much money is given to these projects that have their New Start designations and that are under construction. I'm happy to say that the House version of the bill has just slightly less than what they provided in the 2020 budget. And this is again for the 2021 budget at $2.6 billion. So I feel that That's encouraging, and hopefully the Senate will, support a several similar level of funding as well, which will make our ability to go and get additional funding in the Corps' 2021 work plan successful. Our Galveston district has made that request in their budget request, so I know it's in there for consideration, and we'll be advocating for that in Washington. And again, I always like to tell our partners and those that have a vested interest in the port's growth and the economic vitality of this region that, when you have the opportunity, express to the delegation and others when you have that funding the Port Freeport Channel project is a good investment for the federal government, and strongly encourage it. So would appreciate that support. So in addition to the channel project, we continue to expand our landside infrastructure. This, I always like to point out, is not supported by the tax supported debt. We fund these improvements from our cash flows from our operations, or through revenue bonds that are backed by the cash flows of our operations. And in our 2020 budget, we had about $63 million budgeted for landside infrastructure. We in December, the Port Commission voted to award a contract to McCarthy Builders to expand our berthing capacity at Port Freeport, adding another about 950 feet of berth extension, and the associated dredging there will be there in an adjacent slip. Again, that will be at a depth matching the federal channel, a depth of 51 feet. This project takes quite a while to construct, so we won't be putting it into service until probably September 2022. But as you can see in the bottom picture here, this is the area where the construction is ongoing. It will add significant berthing capacity for Port Freeport. And again, support vessels that are greater in length and can carry larger quantities of containers. So we're really excited about that. We'll also be looking in the future when we place orders for additional cranes to place on those berths. And even before starting the construction, we went ahead and expanded this area here, concreted area, for additional container storage, because the business and activity in the port has been growing, and we wanted to make sure that we stayed ahead of that growth and had sufficient space to support our current customers. We do feel strongly that at the time that we have this extension completed, we'll have additional container services or other activities that will occupy this new berth capacity. So that's an exciting development, because right now we have 26 plus, we have about 32 acres of paved space to work with right now, and just 800 feet of berth. And when we started the construction, we lost a little bit of our berth because you've got to have working areas. So we're doing a lot across one berth right now, and with just our two cranes. So I'm excited about that development. That we've been telling everyone that, we're expanding, we're going to have more berthing capacity, we're going to have the deeper channel, and all of that is under construction now. And having that channel right now, you just have our slip into our berth. So if you put into service a second berth, you've got to have the channel to support it so that you can move multiple vessels in and out of this berthing area. So that's why we said it was so important for us for our first project to be that section of the channel to match and provide the access to the new berth that we're building. We've been working on our multimodal industrial park. In 2019, we had the ribbon cutting for the new rail that went into that site. We spent about $25 million in stabilization and actually laying of the rail into that site. We have 3 parallel tracks, adding about 15,000 linear feet of storage capacity on the site. We did receive a federal grant to add 4 additional parallel track that would add another 20,000 or 24,000 linear feet. That we anticipate initiating that project probably in 2021. We'll we'll hold off doing that this year, but those funds will be made available to us, and our matching portion would be about 3.7 million, because it's about a $10 million project. Of this large multimodal site that you see here, we have over 200 acres available to develop on the site. A portion of it is dedicated to additional vehicle and OEM type parking. It could also be used for an expansion for additional steel laydown if necessary, but about 80 acres is dedicated to the development of warehousing and distribution facilities, upwards of 1.5 million square feet. So that's something that we've also been working on and worked with a regional developer, and again, having the rail into that site was very important to be putting us in position to attract a distribution facility or resin packaging facility on the site. But we have recently completed a 20-acre expansion for Horizon Auto Logistics for the storage of automobiles. This added another 4,000 vehicle unit spaces to the port, and gives them a total of just right at 10,000 vehicle unit spaces. That's substantial. They have about 75 acres now under lease inside the port, and some additional warehouse or transit shed type space that's used for some of the other manufacturing equipment and pieces that go abroad. So they, if you look at the picture on the screen and consider this is what we call our very inner harbor. We're working our ro-ro vessels here on what we call berth number 2, and all of this area now supports those operations, and then the vehicle processing occurs here in these 2 transit sheds. There are a substantial number of jobs that are created by this activity. So if a ro-ro vessel is in working, it takes anywhere from 75 to 100 people to work those vessels and drive the equipment and vehicles on and off those ships. So those are really good jobs. And if you consider now that we are doing 11 or more of those vessels a month, with our berth being occupied anywhere from 11, 12 to 15, 16 days a month. That means that a lot of people are working inside the port now that weren't just a few years ago. And the makeup of that workforce is really important, very diverse, and a lot of women are working the ro-ro ships. They fit well in the cars, and they enjoy that work. So I'm happy to say that has really brought a lot more women to the port and into the workforce at the port. Another new tenant for the multimodal site is Vulcan Materials on the very far west end of the site. They're leasing about 10 acres and storing aggregate there that's coming out of their Medina quarry and railed into the site. So what you see here is one of the first shipments that they brought to the site, and they placed an excavator on top that moves the aggregate from the rail cars into dump trucks that then distribute the material on their lease site. They'll bring in about 100 rail cars at a time, and it takes them less than a day to have that discharged and the rail car be moved out. So that's some new activity, which again, that just helps to support our region and the development that's occurring in the region, bringing in another type of aggregate for local supply, which again helps the overall cost of projects in the region. And then this was mentioned earlier, talking about 36A expansion and Highway 36 expansion. I am so excited that progress has been initiated on this expansion project. And first, this slide, I wanted to point out that the piece here at Port Freeport, and this is from our gate, one of our gates, to the bridge over the diverted Brazos River. This is a segment that we sought what we call rider funds for. The TxDOT has been there in their last few budget cycles. There have been funds that have been designated for highway projects near ports and help alleviate congestion at ports. So we've submitted, with the assistance of our local TxDOT office, we submitted that section of the Highway 36 expansion program, and that was approved. So those funds are there and available and ready to be spent as soon as they complete their permitting with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And then, of course, you know, we're all aware of the projects that were let in Brazoria County and Fort Bend County on Highway 36, and that $100 million worth of projects is really great. So we have been supporting those efforts and hope to continue to compel the completion of that. And then obviously we are so grateful to all of the efforts of the 36A Coalition in advancing the 36 piece and then the connector piece further north. And that is so important for this region because that gives us the alternative connectivity up into the Dallas-Fort Worth market with complete 4-lane access, and just broadens the efficiency of the transportation system out of Port Freeport. So we continue to applaud you in your efforts, look forward to continuing to working with you. But not only does it improve the evacuation routes, but you know, improves that domestic and international trade linkage, will again improve all of our abilities to continue to attract economic development to the regions and more job creation, and to, you know, reduce congestion. And you know that reduced congestion improves air quality, but it's a win for everyone. So again, I just want to thank all of you and to let you know that we'll continue to be your partner in trying to bring that along. So I wanted to close by saying that 2020 did not, you know, started off the way I thought it would, and everything was bright, and then we had the pandemic, and that changed everything. You know, just brought the world to a halt almost, and it's put us, you know, into a recession. But I want you to know the commerce never stopped flowing, the port never stopped working, the ships kept coming, and I want to applaud all of our first responders, our healthcare system, and all that they've done, the nurses and the doctors, and everything that everyone has done to do what they can to keep our economy going. But it was so critically important that there not be a disruption in the global supply chain. That was important to getting the goods that we buy on the shelves, and you know, all that toilet paper and everything that we so desperately needed, to you know, to continuing to move and support the region's industry here that relies on that transportation system to get their goods to the global markets. And you don't think about how sensitive that system is, but just know that many of the crew members on these ships have not left that ship since the pandemic broke out. When first everybody feared crew members bringing the virus to us and thought that was a risk. They look at us as a risk because they have a controlled environment of who's on their ship. So anytime anyone boards their ship, they're very sensitive because they kept those crews on there. So our pilots, Brazos pilots, you know, they have to board every vessel that comes into the channel. They had to implement precautions and work with the vessels, you know, to protect each other. We have 6 pilots that manage the vessel traffic in the Freeport Harbor Channel. Keeping them healthy, extremely important. So we've supported our chairman of the pilot board, Chairman Pearl, issued a letter to everyone endorsing them, their procedures, and asking everyone to respect that as well. We're all in this together, and you've got to have the labor to work the ship. So, you know, all of our stevedoring operations and at the port, we all put in protective measures. We're working together, communicating, so that if there are any cases or incidents that people may contract outside of the port or whatever, that we isolate those and keep them outside of the port so that we protect the workforce. But we haven't missed a beat. We haven't, you know, the ships kept coming and going, the cargo's moved, and we've never been closed. So I really applaud all of the tenants, you know, the pilots, our staff, and everyone, and what they've done to make sure that we've continued to operate. And I'll say, you know, we're leading through uncertain times right now. We're all working together. Texas is always strong. We will come through this. How quickly the economy recovers, you know, that's time will tell. But Port is on path to have a really great future, and we're continuing with our infrastructure development that we have underway. We'll get that completed. We'll get that deeper channel, and be ready for those better days ahead. And that's all I have for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Ms. Saathoff. We did have just a couple of questions that we prepared in advance for you to address. And then if we have some time, we'll go ahead and take some questions in chat
Okay.
from anyone out there. Please don't unmute and just start launching the questions, but do submit them by chat so we can deal with them appropriately. But as you had mentioned in your presentation, Freeport already ranks very competitively compared with other ports, 10th in chemicals, 19th in total tonnage, 26th in container traffic. So how do you, could you just talk generally how the channel project and some of the other improvements upon the completion over time, how it will alter those rankings, how it will affect your comparatively against the other ports, and perhaps how those rankings have already changed over the last 5 years?
Sure, be happy to. Thank you. That's a good question. And when those rankings, you know, not only are the port's public facilities, but also the private terminal facilities, the Dow Chemical, the Phyllis 66, the Seaway Terminal, BASF Corporation, Freeport LNG, we all contribute to those numbers. I'll take you back in time. 2015, the number of vessel arrivals was 754 that year. You think about where we're at today at 2019 at 1,030. You know, that was a substantial increase there just in a short period of time, almost a 50% increase in vessel traffic. With Freeport LNG, their added activity, the tripling of the RoRo business, you know, that's going to add substantial increase, just that alone. When we look at that, we'll see a full year of that in 2020. Now, we had 1 month that was a little bit off, but other than that, that volume has stayed pretty steady despite the economic downturn. So we anticipate, you know, that we'll see, you know, another 20% increase over that. And I guess really from 2020 to 2023, about a 32% increase. I may have misstated my facts. I'm double checking my figures here. But we think just that business alone adds about 300 vessel calls a year. And if you add into that another container carrier or at least one more weekly service coming into our container terminal after we put that new berth into operation, you can see that it doesn't take long that we'll be adding another 50, another 100 vessel calls. And all of that translates into additional tonnage. That increases the number of jobs that are created for the area, and will increase our ranking. Just the Freeport LNG business alone, that liquid natural gas, will propel us in the rankings. We went with Phyllis 66 coming online with just their liquid propane gas exports. We went from 26th in the nation to 19th. So we anticipate continuing to move up in rankings as we see the new volumes from the Freeport LNG coming online, along with the added tonnage from the public dock facilities. The steel is a factor in that as well. Steel is very heavy, so if you're looking at tonnage, and it depends on how you're looking at tonnage, you're looking at weight, you're looking at value, those types of things all play into how those rankings are determined. But we do have high value commodities moving through the port, so we fully expect to grow. And make sure I hit all my little points here that I wanted to make on that. Yeah, I'm excited about it. We've been telling, you know, and reporting that for several years now, and we're seeing it in the RoRo business. currently the highest growth. We'll see more containerized activity, adding a CMA CGM. Currently, we have 3 weekly services plus some other business. That's creates a pretty high utilization of your berths, and so that's why we went ahead and moved out with the expansion of the container handling facility, because we want to bring other weekly global carriers into the port. We're going to have additional space and additional cranes to operate those vessels because they want the reliability. We're very attractive from an efficiency standpoint, but we also have to have the infrastructure in place to serve them, and we're working on that.
Excellent. One of the other questions we prepared, and we are starting to get some, so thank you folks for putting your questions in chat. So will the move by Freeport to become the deepest port on the Texas Gulf Coast, will it create a need for additional regional infrastructure and to help service the port's expanded capacities? And then what impact does that have on 36A's mission to develop a trade and transportation corridor?
Well, again, you can develop waterside infrastructure, but if you don't have the appropriate efficient transportation modes to move the commerce in and out of the port, you're never going to realize, all of your highest return on your investment. So it is really important that we continue to work together to develop the regional infrastructure for the efficient movement of commerce in and through this region. The population growth and the additional consumer demand, the changes in the way that we're buying, the e-commerce, all of those things are changing the way goods move or where they move. So I think there's tremendous opportunity. We're hearing of the Amazon facilities that are being built. That's great opportunity. I also, I'm aware of the Dollar Trees. You've got your Rooms to Go. Goya, all of those folks, having distribution facilities on the west side of Houston. Those are tremendous opportunities to make a strong connectivity to the port as we expand our global connections and services through these, global container carriers. We can continue to really support that type of development as it continues to expand. We fully expect to see the west side of Houston to attract more distribution facilities, and we're here and ready to support that. We think with the Highway 36 expansion, that creates a very efficient transportation by truck corridor. We've been looking at other modes of transportation and trying to strengthen those. One of the reasons for expanding rail inside the port, because currently we did not, prior to the project that we completed last year, we didn't have the ability to receive a full manifest train. We could receive a certain number, small number of cars, but not anything in a large quantity. So now we have that capability to further market the port and to support the region with more freight movement. But I think that the things that are happening in our region now are really, really important, and we can't let up our efforts to try to stay ahead of the growth, because it really gets frustrating when you get behind it and you miss opportunities because you can't provide that efficiency and reliability that companies need when they're making those kinds of decisions. And the auto logistics, the automobiles at one time moved by rail into the port, then they shifted to truck because they were having to be discharged in Spring and then trucked from Spring, Texas down to Port Freeport. Well, now, they have an option if they want, GM does, to rail their automobiles all the way into Port Freeport. So, that's a shift that could occur, but that's why we work on all the different modes, because it will require them as the port grows, has a deeper channel, can handle larger vessels carrying larger quantities of containers, and the consumer demand continues to grow and the population grows. We're going to need all of that to capitalize on the opportunities. And when I say we, it's the region. And I think it's good that our region has more than one port that can support the freight movement. That's a competitive advantage for Texas and for our region.
This is an interesting question. Of course, with the dredging and the deepening of the channel, what happens to all of that material?
That's a good question. We have, I'm trying to think, I don't have a slide I can bring up. We completed a levee raise on a dredge material placement area. That was completed back in May timeframe, I believe it was. So I'm going to back my screen up if y'all will give me just a moment. Let me pull this. Let's see. So when you look at this slide, again, the area that's in red and green, those areas and this here as well will be placed inland. So if you were looking at the port back over near the multimodal facility that's adjacent to Highway 36, there's a large placement area that a new dike or levee around it has been raised. It is ready to receive the material that's dredged in the area in red, green, and blue. The material that's purple and goes offshore, that will go to an offshore placement site. EPA and the Corps have worked together. There are sites that are approved under a nationwide permit, and all that material goes off-site. All of our maintenance material inside the port goes offshore as well, which is good because dredge material placement sites take up a lot of real estate. And the more that material that can go offshore, the better as far as from a real estate perspective. The port owns, over 8,000 acres of land. And a lot of that, and a lot of what's been developed are former dredge material placement sites. So while we're using it today for placement material, in the future it could be another expansion area for the port. But that takes a long time for those areas to consolidate and be able to be used. But we did do the raising. There's an outfall structure. The material, the water, along with the material dredged out, will be pumped into the site, and slowly it will be held and let the sediments fall out of the water, and then the clarified water will then be released into the Brazos River over time. That's how that works.
Okay. We have a thank you for your insights from one of the guests and a question. Can you share insights on ways the port's foreign trade zone program is also contributing to regional economic development?
Absolutely. The Foreign Trade Zones program has been another tool in the toolbox for Port Freeport and Fort Bend County to use. For those that don't know about foreign trade zones, they are a mechanism when the tariff structure is irrational, where you pay a higher duty to bring on a product. Oil is a good example. We used to need to import oil, and it had a 10-cent per barrel duty rate on it, but we had to have it and needed it to refine into gasoline to supply our domestic needs. Using the Foreign Trade Zone program, we were allowed, they could bring that oil into zone status, and once they took it out of zone status, could pay the duty rate on the finished product. The finished product duty rate was 0. So that was an irrational relationship. We had to have the gas, but we were penalizing ourselves and paying a 10% duty rate to something that we were going to manufacture and consume. So that's no longer the situation with crude oil, but it's one we can all relate to. It also allows for duty to not be paid on goods that may come into the zone and then be re-exported. There's a duty deferral arrangement. But that gives us the ability to bring assembly processes and other things and manage the tariff relationship if it's not logical. The automobile sector used to be a big user of the program when they had an irrational tariff relationship with some of their parts that went into the finished automobiles. So over time, as our legislature makes decisions and they negotiate trade agreements, some things just don't make sense. And the Foreign Trade Zone program gives us that tool we need to support the the investments in the United States, bringing assembly jobs and other jobs, to us. So we'll continue to support the region with that program, and it's been very effective. We currently still have several industrial subzone users, and have spot business in the general purpose zone, but we'll support the region with that program.
Thank you. We're maybe we have time for one last quick question. How do you see freight moving to and from the Port of Freeport via rail and highway in percentages, either now and also in the future? What's the demand going to be?
I wish I had that exact answer. As we all know, that especially if it's local area deliveries, truck is generally, the preferred means if it's local area deliveries. If it's bulk commodities that's going to come to the port for export or for packaging and other distribution, then that could move more by rail. Distance plays into that. For example, the Caterpillar product that gets exported, to Australia, a lot of those come in on rail because it's coming, out of the Midwest. So it really depends on the commodities that are moving and the cost of the infrastructure, or the freight rates. I mean, all of that plays into the decision making. GM will probably, evaluate in the future whether or not they want to move automobiles to the port by rail, or if it still makes more sense to move by truck. And we'll also, decisions when we have heavyweight corridors, that plays into the discussions as well. We're going to work with the region where it makes sense to connect our manufacturers with heavyweight corridors too, so that we can reduce the number of trucks. But yet, if that's the most effective way for them to get their goods to the port, that we can do that with the least number of trucks as possible. So I know I didn't give you an exact answer because I don't have that crystal ball, but if you look at some of the other ports along the East Coast and in the Gulf that are really growing, rail is an important component to their growth and connecting the port to other regions and other markets. So we would expect the same as time goes on and our infrastructure continues to expand.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the presentation part of our program and Q&A. If you notice on your screen, you might see the little reaction button. So feel free to give a virtual applause or to Phyllis for the excellent program. We do want to thank everyone for your participation. I want to turn it back over to Chairman Pirtle for just some brief concluding comments.
Have to unmute so I can talk. Yes, I would say, thank you, Phyllis. Really appreciate you being here and explaining some of what's going on at Port Freeport. I can tell you that she could go on for another hour and a half trying to explain to folks what's really happening there in Port Freeport. We have a lot of activity. We're excited, and we have a great leader in Ms. Saathoff. We appreciate her there, keeping our strategic initiatives in front of us and keeping us moving forward. And I can tell you it's not just locally. She reaches out to Washington, Austin, all of her contacts, and keeps things moving for us. Corps of Engineers, she's done a great job there as well. So I really appreciate her and appreciate, on behalf of the Port Commission, we're excited to see what's happening in Port Freeport. If you didn't get the opportunity a couple of weeks ago with Fort Bend Economic Development, EDC had Casey Conway on as a guest speaker, and he spoke for a while. He touted the benefits of Port Freeport several times and is very excited on what's going on there. So we have a lot of opportunities still to provide jobs and business into not just Brazoria County, not just the state of Texas, Fort Bend County, Waller County. Of course, that's what 36A is all about. We need to get that corridor opened up to get to the major highways, because we are going to be putting more trucks on the road. And as we see Highway 36 growth with the widening, there will be more local traffic, more businesses, and everything else. So we need to keep moving forward. So thank you very much. Appreciate everyone being here. Again, Port Freeport, you saw the webpage for Port Freeport. You can go there and see a lot of things that are going on, as well as Highway 36A webpage as well. So would encourage you to get involved with that and help us to keep moving forward. So thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate you hosting this.
Great. We will have we have recorded this, and so a link will be provided to all those who participated in today's online town hall. So you can go back and reference that. Once again, we just thank for everyone's participation. Very much thanks you to Ms. Saathoff for the excellent program. And we will be doing more of these, so just watch for your next invitation for an online meeting. Thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you.